The NBA offseason always produces rumors, speculation, and blockbuster possibilities, but few developments would shake the league quite like a trade involving Giannis Antetokounmpo. For more than a year, questions surrounded the future of the Milwaukee Bucks after Damian Lillard's Achilles injury dramatically altered the franchise's championship outlook. The conversation was no longer about how Milwaukee could win another title around Giannis. Instead, it became about whether the organization would eventually have to consider moving one of the greatest players in franchise history. Now that uncertainty appears to have reached its conclusion. According to reports, Antetokounmpo is headed to the Miami Heat in a franchise-altering deal that sends Tyler Herro, Kel'el Ware, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Kasparas Jakučionis, 3 first-round picks, 1 pick swap, and a second-round selection to Milwaukee. The trade also includes Bobby Portis joining the Heat, creating one of the most significant roster shifts the NBA has seen in recent years. For Miami, this is the move the organization has been chasing for what feels like an eternity. For Milwaukee, it marks the beginning of a new era after years of building around a generational superstar. And for the rest of the league, it completely changes the balance of power heading into the future. The Heat have spent years searching for the next superstar, capable of carrying the franchise into championship contention. Since the summer of 2010, when LeBron James and Chris Bosh joined Dwyane Wade to form one of the most famous super teams in basketball history, Miami has remained competitive but has never landed another player of Giannis's caliber. The organization has developed talent, reached the NBA Finals, and consistently found ways to outperform expectations, but the missing piece was always a true MVP-level cornerstone. That pursuit has finally paid off. The arrival of Antetokounmpo instantly changes the identity of the franchise. Few players in NBA history impact both ends of the floor the way he does. His ability to dominate in transition, attack the basket relentlessly, defend multiple positions, and elevate teammates makes him one of the most valuable players in basketball. When a player of that magnitude becomes available, organizations rarely hesitate. Yet the trade itself is only the beginning of Miami's challenge. The Heat now possess one of the most intimidating front-court combinations in the league, with Giannis and Bam Adebayo. Defensively, the pairing has the potential to be devastating for opponents. Both players can switch across positions, protect the rim, and create chaos with their athleticism. On paper, it is difficult to find many teams capable of matching their versatility. Adding Bobby Portis gives Miami another productive front-court contributor who brings energy, toughness, and scoring punch. His presence strengthens an already formidable interior rotation and provides valuable depth for a team that intends to compete immediately. However, championship contenders require balance, and Miami still has significant work ahead. The current roster remains somewhat incomplete. Andrew Wiggins, Nikola Jovic, and Davion Mitchell provide veteran support, but questions remain about perimeter shooting, offensive creation, and overall depth. The Heat must now build a roster capable of maximizing Antetokounmpo's strengths while addressing the weaknesses exposed by the trade. One of the most important next steps involves securing Giannis long-term. Reports indicate he is expected to sign an extension when eligible with Miami, which would give the franchise stability around its new centerpiece. Acquiring a superstar is one thing. Ensuring that superstar remains committed for years to come is another. The pressure now shifts to the front office. Miami sacrificed substantial draft capital to complete this transaction. The Heat surrendered this year's 13th overall pick, future first-round selections in 2031 and 2033, along with a future pick swap. That limits their flexibility when it comes to pursuing additional stars through trade. As a result, roster improvement will likely require creativity rather than simply throwing draft assets at every available opportunity. Fortunately for Miami, few organizations have a stronger reputation for discovering overlooked talent. Time and again, the Heat have turned undrafted players and little-known prospects into valuable contributors. Players such as Drew Smith, Myron Gardner, and Pele Larson could potentially become part of the supporting cast as the organization searches for affordable depth. Another key decision involves Norman Powell, who enters free agency. Retaining him would provide valuable scoring and perimeter shooting, two areas Miami must strengthen around Giannis and Adebayo. The ability to surround star players with complementary pieces often determines whether a contender reaches the finals or falls short. The biggest reason for optimism may be standing on the sidelines. Erik Spoelstra continues to be regarded as one of basketball's elite coaches. His ability to maximize role players, adjust strategically, and create disciplined team structures has consistently elevated Miami beyond expectations. If there is a coach capable of turning an imperfect roster into a legitimate contender, Spoelstra belongs near the top of that list. That is why the trade feels so important. Miami has completed the hardest part of its offseason plan by acquiring a player of Giannis's stature. Everything that follows will determine whether this move ultimately results in championship contention or simply creates a talented but flawed roster. The Eastern Conference landscape now looks dramatically different, and the Heat have positioned themselves squarely in the conversation. While Miami celebrates landing its superstar, Milwaukee begins the difficult process of rebuilding after an era defined by Antetokounmpo's greatness. Losing a franchise icon is never easy. However, the Bucks appear to have secured a package that provides both immediate help and future flexibility. In situations where a superstar departure becomes inevitable, organizations often face a painful choice between present competitiveness and long-term rebuilding. Milwaukee managed to secure elements of both. Tyler Herro immediately becomes one of the most intriguing pieces in the deal. The Milwaukee native is still only 26 years old and already owns an all-star appearance. His offensive skill set remains highly valuable, particularly for a team seeking scoring production following Giannis's departure. The question is whether Herro remains part of Milwaukee's long-term plans. An upcoming extension looms, and there will be significant debate regarding his market value. While Herro is an excellent scorer, committing maximum-level money to a player who has not consistently performed at an all-NBA level presents risks. Because of that, speculation could continue regarding whether Milwaukee keeps him or eventually flips him to another team for additional assets. Regardless of what happens with Herro, the Bucks secured several young players who fit different stages of a rebuilding process. Kel'el Ware may be one of the most fascinating prospects involved. His combination of size, mobility, rebounding ability, and defensive versatility gives Milwaukee a player with significant upside. He remains on a rookie contract and possesses the type of developmental potential rebuilding teams prioritize. Jaime Jaquez Jr. adds another valuable dimension. His all-around game, toughness, and ability to contribute in multiple areas make him an attractive piece for any roster. After emerging as a sixth Man of the Year candidate, he demonstrated that he can impact winning basketball while fitting seamlessly into different roles. Kasparas Jakučionis represents a longer-term investment. The young point guard prospect still has areas requiring development, but his playmaking instincts and scoring potential provide reasons for optimism. Milwaukee can afford patience as it evaluates his growth trajectory. Perhaps the most valuable aspect of the trade is the draft capital. The Bucks regain assets that could shape their future for years. First-round picks remain the lifeblood of many rebuilding organizations, especially when paired with young talent already on the roster. Milwaukee now possesses additional opportunities to identify cornerstone players, package selections in future trades, or accelerate another competitive window. The timing of those picks could prove particularly important. The Bucks will inevitably hope that Miami declines by the time some of those future selections convey. Antetokounmpo is currently 31 years old, and projecting NBA rosters years into the future is never simple. If the Heat experience regression later in the decade, those draft assets could become even more valuable. What makes this trade especially interesting is that both organizations achieved objectives aligned with their realities. Miami recognized an opportunity to acquire a generational superstar and aggressively pursued contention. Milwaukee accepted that competing for championships immediately was no longer realistic and focused on replenishing talent and assets. Neither side appears trapped between competing timelines. The ultimate verdict on the trade will depend on what happens next. Can Miami successfully build a championship-caliber supporting cast around Giannis and Bam? Can Milwaukee develop its young players while maximizing the value of its newly acquired draft capital? Those questions will shape the Eastern Conference for years to come. One thing is already clear. The NBA landscape looks dramatically different today than it did yesterday, and the ripple effects of this blockbuster could be felt for the rest of the decade.